Manhattan, Upper East Side. That November night changed everything forever. Michael Richardson controlled a $500 million tech empire, but he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. In 2 weeks, he would marry Victoria Sterling, an influencer with 2 million followers who had taken New York by storm with her beauty and artificial charm. The $15 million penthouse on Park Avenue was being prepared to welcome 300 VIP guests. Flowers imported from Ecuador, Cristal champagne, a Vera Wang dress. Everything was perfect for the wedding of the century, as Vogue had dubbed it. But Michael didn't know he was being filmed by his own security cameras as he made the most important decision of his life. It was 6:47 p.m. when his iPhone vibrated with a motion alert from the penthouse. Michael was closing a $50 million deal with Japanese investors when he decided to quickly check the cameras. What he saw made his blood run cold. His 6-year-old daughter Emma was on the floor of the main living room, crying desperately. Victoria Sterling, impeccable in her $8,000 Hermes outfit, held the pieces of a colorful drawing. But it wasn't just any drawing, it was the work of art that Emma had spent 3 days creating for Grace Washington, the 52-year-old black nanny who had been taking care of her since her mother's death. The camera audio captured every poisonous word. That disgusting black woman doesn't deserve anything from you. You're the daughter of a billionaire, you can't be making gifts for the maid. Victoria methodically tore each piece of the drawing as Emma begged, "Please stop. It's Grace's birthday present." But Victoria was in a trance of pure racial hatred. "She'll be fired as soon as I marry her father. Black women like her need to know their place in this society." And then she did the unthinkable. She threw all the pieces into the kitchen garbage disposal and pressed the button, destroying the loving work of an innocent child forever. It was at that moment that Grace appeared, drawn by the screams. What Michael saw next revealed the true character of each woman. Grace immediately knelt down beside Emma, completely ignoring Victoria, and hugged the girl with a tenderness that broke Michael's heart. "Don't cry, my angel. We can make another picture, even more beautiful," whispered Grace, her own tears falling silently. Victoria exploded, "Don't you dare comfort her. You're nothing but a lazy black maid who doesn't know her place." But Grace didn't respond. She just held Emma tighter, humming softly a lullaby that always calmed the girl. Michael ended the meeting without explanation and rushed home. During the 15-minute drive, his mind processed 8 months of his relationship with Victoria. All the little remarks about keeping an appropriate distance from the staff, all the comments about teaching Emma about social hierarchy, now it all made sense. Victoria was an outspoken racist who had hidden her true nature until she felt safe enough to reveal who she really was. When he arrived at the penthouse, he found Emma on Grace's lap, both on the sofa in the library. Victoria was posting stories on Instagram as if nothing had happened. "How was your day, love?" she asked casually when Michael entered. He ignored her completely and went straight to Emma. "Daddy, Victoria destroyed my drawing for Grace," the girl said between sobs. "She said Grace is leaving and will never be able to see me again." Michael looked at Grace, who looked away, embarrassed. Then he looked at Victoria, who shrugged. "The girl needs to learn the realities of life, Michael. She can't keep getting attached to employees." The coldness in her voice was the last straw. "The wedding is off," Michael said calmly. "I want you out of this house in an hour." Victoria laughed, thinking he was joking. "You wouldn't do that because of a black maid." But when she saw the video from Michael's iPad, her face turned pale. She knew those images would destroy her if they were made public. Victoria left the penthouse that same night, but not before making threats. "No decent woman will want you after she finds out you chose a black maid," she spat before stepping into the elevator. Michael didn't even care. His priority was Emma, who had refused to leave Grace's lap since the incident. The next morning, Michael did something he had never done before. He canceled all his meetings and spent the day watching Grace and Emma. It was as if he was seeing everything for the first time. Grace wasn't just a nanny, she was a second mother to Emma. She knew every food preference, every nightmare, every joy the little girl had. And more importantly, Emma clearly loved her more than anyone else in the world except her own father. During lunch, Emma asked a question that changed everything. "Daddy, now that Victoria's gone, can Grace stay forever?" Michael looked at Grace, who quickly said, "Emma, sweetheart, I'm just your nanny. Your dad is going to find a wonderful wife who will be your new mommy." But Emma shook her head vehemently. "I don't want a new mommy. I want you to be my mommy, Grace." The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Michael saw tears in Grace's eyes and understood that there was much more to this story. That night, after putting Emma to bed, he called Grace into his office to talk. "Tell me about yourself, Grace. I want to know everything." At first she resisted, saying that her personal life didn't matter. But Michael insisted, and finally Grace revealed a story that left him speechless. Grace Washington wasn't born a nanny. She was Dr. Grace Washington, the first black tenured professor in the Department of Art History at Columbia University. At 35, she was considered one of the world's leading experts on African art and had a bright future ahead of her. Then Elena, her only daughter, was diagnosed with leukemia at age 14. "I gave up everything to take care of her," Grace said, her voice breaking. "I sold my house in Brooklyn Heights, my car, even my art collection, which was worth $500,000. All to pay for experimental treatments that insurance didn't cover." For 2 years, Grace fought alongside her daughter, taking her to specialized clinics in Houston, Boston, and even Switzerland. Her husband, Dr. David Washington, a professor of medicine at Harvard, couldn't take the pressure. He said I was being irrational, that I was wasting our life on a lost cause. He left me when Elena was in the final stages of the disease, taking half of what was left of our assets. Grace paused, wiping away tears. "Elena died in my arms 3 days before her 16th birthday. I had spent everything and had nothing left." After the funeral, Grace discovered that her position at the university had been eliminated due to budget cuts, a polite excuse for getting rid of someone who had been absent a lot. At 44, she was alone, broke, and devastated. "I saw an ad for a nanny for a girl who had lost her mother. I thought maybe I could take care of someone else's daughter, since I couldn't save my own." Michael was deeply moved. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" Grace gave a sad smile. "Men like you don't marry women like me, Mr. Richardson. I'm just a black nanny who takes care of your daughter. That's my reality." But Michael was beginning to see a completely different reality. Over the next few days, he observed Grace with new eyes. He saw how she taught Emma about art, history, and literature with a depth that revealed her academic background. He noticed how fluently she spoke French and Spanish with Emma, how she solved complex math problems while helping with homework. One afternoon, he found Grace crying while looking at an old photo on her cell phone. It was Elena, a beautiful black teenager, smiling next to her mother at her graduation. "She would be a doctor today," Grace whispered. She wanted to follow in her father's footsteps, but without abandoning her family like he did. That night, Michael made a decision. He hired the best private investigator in New York to look into Grace's history. What he discovered left him furious and determined to see justice done. The detective's report arrived a week later, and Michael was shocked by what he discovered. Dr. David Washington had not only abandoned Grace during his daughter's illness, he had systematically sabotaged her life. While Elena was battling cancer, David had been having an affair with a colleague from Harvard Medical School, going so far as to embezzle money from their joint account to fund romantic getaways. Worse still, David had used his influence in the academic community to ensure that Grace would never get another job at a university. Emotional instability was the code he spread in academic circles, effectively destroying the career Grace had spent decades building. The detective also discovered that Grace lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, rode the subway for 2 hours every day to get to work, and sent 30% of her salary to a research foundation for childhood leukemia. She had turned her personal tragedy into her life's mission, even though she was living on the bare minimum. Michael was even more impressed when he discovered letters of recommendation from former colleagues at Columbia. "Grace Washington is the most brilliant mind I have ever known," wrote a professor emeritus. "Her thesis on African influences in Renaissance art completely changed our understanding of Western art history." There were also letters from parents of students Grace had taught, thanking her for inspiring their children to pursue academic careers. One of the letters was from a mother whose black son had become the first in his family to attend an Ivy League university. "Professor Washington showed me that people like us can also be intellectuals and academics. She saved my son's life." Armed with this information, Michael called Grace in for another conversation. This time he got straight to the point. "Grace, I want you to come back to teaching. I'm going to fund a special chair at Columbia in your honor, and you will be the tenured professor." Grace was shocked. "Mr. Richardson, that's impossible. I haven't taught in 8 years, and besides, Michael interrupted her. Besides, you're black? Grace, you're the smartest woman I've ever met. Emma learned more history and art from you in 3 years than she would in a decade at an expensive private school. But Grace shook her head. Even if it were possible, I can't leave Emma. She's already lost one mother. I'm not going to be another person who abandons her. It was at that moment that Michael realized the depth of Grace's love for her daughter. That same night, Emma did something that surprised both adults. During dinner, she announced, "Daddy, I want you to marry Grace." Michael almost choked on his wine, and Grace blushed with embarrassment. "Emma, honey, that's not how it works," Grace began to explain. But Emma was determined. "Why not? You love me, I love you, and Daddy loves you too. I see how he looks at you." Michael's heart raced when he realized that Emma was right. He had indeed fallen in love with Grace, but he hadn't had the courage to admit it. In the days that followed, the tension in the penthouse was palpable. Michael and Grace avoided being alone together, but there was an undeniable energy between them. Emma, with the perceptiveness of children, began to create coincidences. She would forget toys to force the two to look for them together, or pretend to be sick so that Grace would have to stay up late when Michael came home from work. The turning point came on a rainy December night. Emma had had a terrible nightmare about losing Grace and woke up screaming. Michael arrived in the bedroom at the same time as Grace, and the two of them comforted the girl together. When Emma finally fell back asleep, Grace and Michael found themselves alone in the dark hallway. "Michael," Grace whispered, "I need to tell you something. I've fallen in love with you, but I know it can never happen. Tomorrow I'm going to look for another job. It's not fair to you or Emma to stay here knowing how I feel." Before she could finish, Michael kissed her. It was a soft kiss, filled with all the feelings he had been holding back. When they parted, he said, "Grace, I love you too. And I don't want you to go anywhere." But Grace pulled away. "Michael, you don't understand. I'm a 52-year-old black woman who works as a nanny. You're a 41-year-old white billionaire. The world will never accept our relationship." Michael took her hands. "Then let's change the world." The news leaked 3 days later. Victoria Sterling, furious over the cancellation of the wedding, had hired paparazzi to follow Michael. Photos of him kissing Grace on the penthouse terrace splashed the front page of the New York Post with a headline, "Billionaire dumps model fiancée for black nanny." The scandal exploded instantly. Victoria seized the opportunity to get her revenge, giving tearful interviews on TV shows. "Michael was completely manipulated by this woman," she cried to the cameras. "She took advantage of his vulnerability and seduced both him and his daughter. She's a classic gold digger who used the child to get to the father." The tabloids reveled in the story. "Black Cinderella wins over billionaire prince" was one of the milder headlines. Others were openly racist. "Cunning maid uses daughter to snare rich boss," and "From slum to penthouse, the social climb of a nanny." Grace was devastated by the exposure. Paparazzi surrounded the building, shouting invasive questions. Emma could no longer go to school normally, as other parents made malicious comments. "Is it true that your father is dating the maid?" one mother asked Emma directly at the playground. The situation worsened when David Washington, Grace's ex-husband, decided to cash in on the fame. He gave an exclusive interview to the program 60 Minutes, painting Grace as an unstable woman who had destroyed their marriage with irrational obsessions. "She spent our entire savings on bizarre alternative treatments for our daughter," he lied blatantly. "When our daughter died, Grace had a complete mental breakdown. I'm not surprised she latched onto the first rich man who showed her pity." Michael was furious, but Grace stopped him from suing David. "It will only make things worse," she said. "The more we react, the more ammunition we give them." But the pressure was too much. Grace began receiving death threats from white supremacists. Anonymous letters arrived daily with words of racial hatred. Emma was suffering too. Children at school, influenced by their parents' comments, began teasing her. "Your new mom is an ugly black woman who only wants your dad's money," a 7-year-old girl said cruelly. Emma came home crying, asking if people were right about Grace. That was the last straw for Michael. He called a press conference at the Plaza Hotel for the following week, determined to tell the truth about Grace and expose the lies that were being spread. Meanwhile, Victoria stepped up her attacks. She created the hashtag #GoldDiggerNanny on social media, which quickly went viral with thousands of people sharing racist memes about Grace. Influencers took advantage of the controversy to gain followers, making videos analyzing the seduction tactics of ambitious nannies. The pressure became so intense that Grace made a desperate decision. One night, while Michael was working late at the office, she packed her bags and wrote a farewell letter to Emma. "My dear angel, I love you more than anything in the world, but my presence is hurting you and your father. You deserve a happy life without all this cruelty. Never forget that you are the most special girl in the universe." Grace was walking out the back door when Emma woke up and saw her. "Grace, don't go!" the little girl screamed, running down the hall. The desperate cry woke Michael, who came running and found Emma clinging to Grace's legs, both of them crying. "I can't take it anymore," Grace sobbed. "They're destroying you because of me. Emma can't even go to school without being humiliated. This has to stop." But Emma, with the simple wisdom of children, said something that changed everything. "Grace, when Mom died, you taught me that true love never gives up. Are you going to give up on our love?" That night, the three of them slept together in Michael's king-size bed, Emma between them, holding both adults' hands. By morning, Michael had a plan. Michael spent the early hours of the morning working with his team of investigators and lawyers. By sunrise, he had devastating evidence against everyone who had attacked Grace. David Washington had, in fact, embezzled more than $200,000 from the joint account during Elena's illness, using the money to finance his extramarital affair. There was also evidence that he had bribed academic colleagues to destroy Grace's professional reputation. Victoria Sterling had an even more sordid past. The detective discovered that she had scammed at least 3 wealthy men before Michael, always using the same pattern: gain their trust, plan a lavish wedding, and then blackmail them with threats of public scandal when it suited her. But Michael saved his best card for last. He discovered that Grace had been nominated for a Nobel Prize in Literature for her research on African influences in Renaissance art, a nomination that was withdrawn only because she was no longer active academically due to caring for Elena. The press conference at the Plaza Hotel was packed. Michael began by projecting a photo of Elena Washington at age 15, smiling bravely despite being bald from chemotherapy. "This is Elena Washington," he said to the cameras. "She wanted to be a doctor to help other children with cancer. She died the day before her 16th birthday, after her mother sold everything she owned trying to save her." The room fell silent as Michael told Grace's true story. He showed photos of her receiving academic awards, letters from former students thanking her for changing their lives, documents proving that David had stolen money intended for his own daughter's treatment. "Grace Washington is not a gold digger," Michael declared. "She is one of the most intelligent and generous women I have ever met. She turned her personal tragedy into unconditional love for my daughter, never asking for anything in return except the chance to care for a child who had lost her mother, just as she had lost her daughter." Then Michael did something that shocked everyone. He knelt down in front of the cameras and called Grace live on air. "Grace Washington, will you marry me?" Her answer, broadcast to millions of people, was simple: "Michael, I love you, but I will only accept if it is for true love, not to prove anything to anyone." "Then it's for true love," Michael replied, still on his knees. The public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. #TrueLoveWins became a worldwide trending topic. Celebrities began sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity and unlikely love. Oprah Winfrey personally called Grace, offering her an interview to tell the truth. David Washington and Victoria Sterling were completely exposed. David lost his position at Harvard when evidence of corruption came to light. Victoria was cancelled on social media and lost all her advertising contracts when videos of her racial cruelty went viral. But the best revenge came from an unexpected source. Emma, at age 6, made a home video defending Grace that was seen by 50 million people in a week. "Grace is my mommy in my heart," the girl said, looking directly into the camera. "She teaches me about art, helps me with nightmares, and makes heart-shaped pancakes every Sunday. The people who say bad things about her don't really know her." The wedding took place 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony in Martha's Vineyard. Grace wore a simple but elegant dress, and Emma was the maid of honor. But the most emotional moment came when Grace announced the creation of the Elena Washington Foundation, dedicated to research into childhood leukemia and scholarships for young black people interested in medicine. "Elena can no longer become a doctor," Grace said in her speech, "but her memory will help other children live and other young black people follow their academic dreams." A year later, Grace was back at Columbia University as a tenured professor, teaching a new generation about the richness of African art. Michael reduced his workload to spend more time with his family. Emma blossomed, developing a love for art that her mother Grace had carefully nurtured. The apartment in the Bronx was replaced by a house in the Hamptons, but Grace retained the simplicity that had always characterized her. Every morning, she still made heart-shaped pancakes for Emma, now with Michael by her side, forming the family that none of the three knew they were looking for. Michael and Grace's story proved that true love knows no color, social class, or societal expectations. Sometimes, the family we need is right in front of our eyes, disguised as an employee, just waiting for us to have the courage to see beyond appearances and prejudices. If this story has inspired you, share it to show that love always conquers hate, and that the most extraordinary people are sometimes found in the simplest places, just waiting for a chance to show who they really are.